All right, good morning everyone and welcome to MOQdigital's Royal Commission into Aged Care Recommendations webinar. I'm Amelia, the marketing intern here at MOQdigital, and I will be your moderator today. So if you hear my voice pop in from time to time, that is why. Today I have with me MOQdigital's Peter Ward, our Chief Solutions Officer. We also want to encourage interaction and collaboration in today's event, so there will be a Q&A box open, and we'll also allow time at the end of the session for any questions you might have. So please use that time wisely. Awesome. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Amelia, and welcome to everyone to this morning's webinar. We're really excited today to be able to present MOQdigital's recommendations of the recent Royal Commission into Aged Care. The aged care industry is in an era of unprecedented change. The confluence of current aged care reforms, business model transformation, and technology disruption is reshaping multiple areas of not only the aged care industry ecosystem, but the broader community care ecosystem and the health sector more broadly. One of the big pivots in this space is that consumers are now becoming the centre of these changes, and the recent Royal Commission to Aged Care Quality and Safety further disrupts this sector. What we want to do in today's session is really walk through a number of the findings that were found inside of the report, but also the impact that that has on the technical posture and the way that services are delivered in this new consumer-centric and focused world. MOQdigital is really at the cutting edge of this space, working not only with organisations across the broader healthcare sector, but also specifically organisations in community care and aged care. And what we want to introduce through today is the understanding and learnings that we've got talking to many of those organisations and the challenges that they're facing as they need to continue to pivot and continue to be disrupted as well. The sector continues to change, not only from a funding perspective, but also the emergence of new entrants is into that space as well. Organisations that are then pivoting and really starting to shape and transform the way that services are delivering, but also being able to carve off individual niches as they start to build up that consumer-centric focus, and often leveraging technology in order to be able to then change and deliver that capability. As Amelia said, my name's Peter Ward. I'm the Chief Solution Officer for MOQdigital and responsible for helping shape the way that we deliver solutions out to all of our customers inside of the sector. So why MOQdigital? Well, a little bit of background about our organisation. So our organisation is almost 400 people strong today across a number of different industries and verticals. But one of those key focus verticals for us is the community care and healthcare vertical. We're 100% Microsoft focused as an organisation. Microsoft Azure is the public cloud that we deliver all of our solutions on and help organisations unlock the value of their technology investment and help them to transform the way that their existing IT services are delivered into the hyperscale public cloud based on Microsoft Azure. We're a strong partner with Microsoft, but really a safe pair of hands for our customers as well. And that's testament to the 13 Microsoft Gold competencies that we've been awarded, as well as also a number of advanced specializations that we've achieved as well. And if we look across our geographical focus, one of the things that makes MOQdigital a strong and safe pair of hands is that many community care organisations and aged care organisations aren't geographically focused. Many of them deliver services not only across an individual state, but also across national boundaries as well. We're very strong East Coast focus inside of our business with offices and teams based in Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne, but also with our capability that we deliver in Perth as well, truly making MOQdigital a national organisation. And if we look at the services that we offer across the aged care and community care sector, those areas of expertise focus around cybersecurity. And one of the interesting things when we start to look at the healthcare sector is if we look at then all of the privacy disclosure information, as well as recent security breaches, health is one of the areas that has the lowest posture in that space. Our cybersecurity practice is designed to then help increase that posture, but also to increase the humanisation of the security solutions that we provide, making sure that rather than actually just being blockers, security becomes an enabler, but also enables then innovation to be driven, knowing that data is safe, but also systems are safe as well. Underpinning any IT organisation is the foundational services. It's how we go about delivering that capability in a hybrid world, whether that's on-prem storage and compute or whether that's provisioning that in a public or private cloud. MOQdigital can assist deliver that. And finally, our digital services capability, helping organisations truly then be able to then undertake and utilise digital transformation to then meet their ongoing organisational objectives, enabling them to be able to then meet the customer where they need and be able to then do that in an efficient manner to be able to then do more with less. And that's one of the common themes that we see working with organisations in the community care sector and aged care is a constant need to be able to do more with less. How do we actually go and reduce operational cost and be able to then focus more time delivering the services that those that need that directly then need with that? So if we then look at what our top 5 IT priorities are, one of the interesting things is when we start to actually coalesce these priorities, not only with the broader IT priorities, but also then overlaying that with the community care space, is that there's a very, very big causation between those. And if we look at those top 5 IT priorities that organisations are struggling with today, one of the first ones is around the balance of remote and in-person operations. In a post-pandemic world where the traditional office environment has been disrupted, ensuring that there's a consistent experience with field staff, whether that's nursing staff delivering services in the field, whether that's somebody in the support office, or whether that's somebody in a facility, ensuring that we have a balance and equal opportunity to access those technology investments, no matter where somebody is then trying to consume them from. Helping actually remove some of the challenges associated with video conference overload and the change in the way that we're meeting and how we're interacting directly with each other, and ensuring that there's that constant balance there. One of the other priorities is around how we go about accelerating automation. And this is going to come through as a common theme as we start to talk through the challenges that were identified inside of the Royal Commission, but also the need for organisations to be able to then facilitate their IT platforms to enable then not only IT, but broader stakeholders to be able to then have access to timely information, but then using systems with machine learning and AI to start to make intelligent decision-making processes, which enables us to then focus on managing by exception. Now, we're generating, consuming more data from all of the systems and all of the sensors inside of the organisation, but it's how we then go and actually make meaningful decisions, and doing that in a streamlined process that's becoming more and more of a priority. The other thing from a funding and the way that the models are changing is being where the customer is and delivering the right services at the right time to be able to then meet the requirements, both from a statutory perspective, but also from a funding perspective, but also thinking about the customer as a broader, rather than just the individual, but all of the other stakeholders and caregivers that are associated with delivering services for not only the individual, but that broader engagement that needs to be created. Moving more now to be customer centric to enable us to then focus on not only delivering services, but how we can then improve communication, and also then think about acquisition from a customer perspective, but also retention, especially as we move more and more towards a customer-centric model is where it's a user-choose model. Offering personalised services and personalised communication. So following on from being where the customer is to being able to then interact with that person in a way that's meaningful to them, in a way that's needed directly by them. And then underpinning that is not only the operational piece, but also thinking about each of those components as delivering services out to the more broad stakeholders, but then underpinning that and tying that back to the challenge of data and cybersecurity. There's been a number of recent then issues and breaches that have occurred across the health sector, as well as community care and aged care, that's highlighted the need that cybersecurity and protecting personal information becomes now a key and centric component of any IT operations inside of the sector. And when we think about digital transformation, we often don't think about digital transformation in the community care sector. Often it's thought of as a laggard in regards to technology investments. And as you read through the Royal Commission into aged care recommendations, technology is often something that's hampering organisations. It's almost that boat anchor that slows an organisation down. Really, that digital transformation is then focused on 4 main components and leveraging those to the maximum of their ability. Digital transformation, when you break that down, is transforming products. So transforming those services and how they're delivered. Now, transforming those services to enable technology to be able to meet the customer where it makes sense, whether that's through telehealth, whether that's through then more interaction, or whether that's thinking about using technology to augment the way that services are delivering and starting to think about a blended model of not only in-home services, but also in facilities as well. Digital transformation also then underpins how to go about optimising services and the way that they're delivered. Carrying on from that theme of how do you go about doing more with less, technology is really about how do you start to take some of the existing business processes and digitise them. And this is really the heart of digital transformation. Digital transformation is not something that's new. Organisations have always constantly strived to then be able to then be more efficient. Business process optimization and looking at how we go about delivering a particular service line now is being able to be accelerated more and more through access to readily, easily usable technology, whether that's low code or no code technology, or whether that's through RPA, being able to take existing legacy processes and streamline them. But thinking about how you can then go and digitize every part of the business to be able to then go and remove any paper-based or any manual capability. Empowering employees. So putting data in the hands of those that need it at the right time, but empowering them to be able to then make accurate and timely decisions based on that information. We've seen that with a number of organisations that we work with is how by democratising data and making that available to everybody in the organisation then allows then that operational efficiency to be rapidly accelerated there. The subject matter experts and those that are working in the field and understand the challenges, having access to data to be able to validate their hypotheses and feed that into that ongoing transformation. And finally, when we think about how technology is shaping the way that services are delivered by care providers today, it's really about engaging the customer. So how do we increase the share of wallet with that individual? But how do we create raving fans out of the services that we start to provide that continues to grow and ensure the ongoing success of our organisation in a customer-centric manner? And when we think about this, data is what underpins all of this capability. You often heard the terminology that data is the new oil. We're really in that third wave of the Industrial Revolution. The first wave of that industrial revolution was the easy access that people had to the loom in order to be able to then change the way that people then could mass produce textiles, which dramatically then changed the ability for people to have access to work and dramatically changed living standards throughout the world. That second wave was that true industrial revolution or the mechanicisation of the loom, the ability to actually then move that into something that was able to then produce product en masse. But what was the enabler of that transformation was oil. Without easy access to oil, none of those machines could then operate in the efficient manner that they did, which is why data becomes the new oil, because underpinning all of this digital transformation is then leveraging data to be able to then utilise that. And data became a fundamental point as we walked through the Royal Commission report, whether that's data interchange with the My Health records, whether that's accurate and timely recording of data in care management systems, or whether that's the ability to easily then share data across a number of different systems across providers. Everything definitely so centred around data and the solutions that needed to be provided in order to continue to deliver care services. So if we think about the current state, so the current state inside of the aged care facility was really focused around a number of observations that we've seen working directly with our customers, but also then working actually through a number of the reports and the findings that have recently come out in the care sector, but also specifically in the aged care sector. And when we think about this, many of this isn't new to people actually on the ground working inside of the sector. But what we saw through the current state analysis that came out of the Royal Commission report was very much a disconnect between business processes. We weren't able to then go and take and hand over accurately between shifts between nursing staff. Particular processes that were paper-based, there was often a delay in that data being then recorded directly back into the line of business systems in order to be able to then have an accurate view of the services delivered. That had direct funding impacts in order to be able to then meet that, but also the ability to be able to deliver those services. Underpinning those disconnected business processes was a lack of data collection and data sharing. So making that data available not only internal to the organisation, but able to share that data and share that finding across care providers, whether that's actually through then facility staff, through GPs, through government capability, being able to then easily do that, which feeds into the interoperability. Often systems are working in silos, disconnected. Many cases of double keying needing to happen where data is entered into one system and then having to be manually rekeyed into another system, introducing inaccuracies in data, and in its worst case scenario, having direct patient impact as a result of that. Obsolete technology, so a platform, as we said, that rather than actually accelerating and enabling transformation, slows that transformation down. And a fundamental lack of standardisation. Standardisation from an API perspective to be able to do the interchange, but also standardisation around data format. We look at the success of some of the data interchange across the broader health sector by the introduction of HL7 and other messaging capability. The ability to be able to then introduce that across the broader sector enables this acceleration and bit change to be adopted very easily. If we think about the technology roadmap though, the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council produced a roadmap for the Australian aged care sector in 2017. This technology roadmap focused around 5 destinations. And when we overlay these destinations with the findings of the Royal Commission report, we see that there's this common theme. And one of the challenges is that many organisations have not had the opportunity to be able to adopt this technology roadmap that's then slowed down their ability to solve some of the challenges with their current state. So this roadmap, when we look at the destinations, is just applicable now as it was when it was first released in 2017. And underpinning that roadmap was focusing around technology-enabled operations, business and communication systems being able to then communicate easily with each other. Thinking about how services can be enhanced to be able to deliver care and support for older people, specifically in aged care. Thinking about technology as an enhancement, so the ability to actually take information, make it easy to access and make it easy to share across everybody. Technology also then being the centre, being able to then enhance the assessment eligibility and the changing needs. So being able to evolve and be able to then pivot the services that are offered as the needs of the individual changes, as they then have access to then more funding, but also as their needs change, being able to ensure that they're able to then produce an ongoing assessment report to help understand the capability. But also then helping to uplift the technology literacy and capability of the workforce, being able to then disseminate information easily, but doing that through a platform that enables everybody inside of the organisation to be able to consume that in a manner that makes sense to them and spend more time analysing the information rather than having to collate and prepare that information, as just some of the common themes that we saw. And that technology roadmap continues to hold true as we move forward. So if we look at what some of the recommendations were there, and really what the summary of findings as we came through, what came out directly of the reporting of the Aged Care Royal Commission, there's an underlying core themes there. The first of those is establishing an independent aged care data authority. And the recommendation there is that the Australian government should establish an independent data authority that really has this central role in aged care, but also more broadly in community care as well, to help transform the way that data is managed from being simply just focused around historical data to allowing data to be consumed in real time, and that acquisition to be able to then feed into then helping make ongoing policy decisions, but also help with regulatory monitoring and research to be able to then continue to then evolve the way that services are then being delivered. And the second of those findings was then focused specifically around enhancing the My Health record. And this is once again actually then thinking about how the Australian government can then go and take the existing My Health record to include aged care information. And when we start to think about this, then the data interchange and how we interface directly with this then becomes then how do we take that data and take it out of the care management systems that are being utilised by the sector today, and then be able to then enhance and enrich the My Health record so that it's actually moved from a traditional document-based system so that it can be more information focused to be able to then have greater uptake, not only in the aged care sector, but the broader healthcare sector as well. The third point there around the proposed actions that we see is then thinking about the improved interoperability between aged care providers, healthcare providers, as well as the Australian government. So thinking about each of those as a symbiotic relationship to help deliver the care services that are required across the sector. And part of that's identifying then standard data sets that information can be captured so that it's captured in a standard and rigorous way across all aged care facilities and how services are providing, but then feeding that back in to help provide efficient eligibility assessments. And what that does through an enablement perspective is then enable data sharing between aged care and healthcare providers and ensuring that that relationship provides accurate and timely information, but also then feeding into how aged care providers and healthcare providers interface and integrate directly with the services that the Australian government provides. Underpinning that, though, is also then focusing around enabling application change. So often the services and the applications that are being developed are almost obsolete or end of life, specifically around aged care entitlement and the way that the calculation is used there, and the payment systems that are then managed by Services Australia. So really thinking about how that then becomes part of an industry move to redesign the MyCare website and the service provider capability tools to ensure that they're fit for purpose, but also improve the accessibility of those services as well, so they can be used by all Australians. As part of that, that feeds into reducing the manual reporting by aged care providers. And as we move into more of a data interchange, then thinking about how that data hub can then start to automate reporting via online tools rather than the current cumbersome interchange processes that are required there. Once again, enabling organisations to focus more time on delivering services rather than the data interchange. If we continue to think as we move forward there, one of the other key capabilities is how do we go about then improving the digital skill set of the aged care workforce and underpinning that across the board. Because really there's a need to increase that digital literacy training for personal care worker registration and employment. This training needs to be then delivered across the board to increase that proficiency, and at a minimum really be able to then ensure that the services that are being provided through the My Health record, as well as the digital aged care provider care management and medicinal systems, are accessible to everybody, as well as also thinking about where assistive technology, including smart home and mobile solutions, plays in this, and the ability then for frontline workers to then be empowered to be able to work and use these systems efficiently. Then there's the improvement around IT infrastructure capability. And that really then helps thinking about how organisations can continue to adopt cloud capability for their IT and think about how cloud technology can be utilised to increase the agility and accelerate the way that IT solutions are provided. And this is underpinned by thinking about smart technology in home and aged care to be able to then improve the way that care is provisioned, especially now that cognitive services and capabilities available on the edge, and thinking about how that starts to fit in to then be able to then increase the level of home care services as well. But also thinking about how basic technology services are then delivered throughout then each of then the facilities. So increasing then the posture of the way that services are then provided with ubiquitous broadband and ubiquitous Wi-Fi capability across facilities there. And finally, underpinning the telehealth capability as well. We're seeing more and more of this that's been adopted as a result of the pandemic, often being a forcing function for the way that telehealth is then being utilised, whether that's through commodity services such as Microsoft Teams, or whether that's more specialised capability. And what we're seeing with the enablement of Microsoft Teams is the ability to then be able to embed applications directly inside of the meeting experience, which means data can then be interfaced and captured right inside of that telehealth meeting and then entered directly inside of the care management system, which continues to assist optimise the way that services are then provided, ensure that accurate and timely collection of information is then available directly inside of the business. So if we think about sort of walking through that action plan, what we now want to then start to think about there is, as an individual organisation, what is it that you can do in order to then continue to increase and really be prepared as some of those changes continue to be then regulated and then made available, but also enabling you to then start to be prepared and understand where those IT investments need to be made to help facilitate as many of these changes then start to be legislated and made available to everybody. So one of the first pieces is actually around really establishing a data-driven culture. Now, when we think about data, we spoke about data as being a core enabler as we start to then drive that. But when we start to think about a data-driven culture, it's really making decisions and moving away from the traditional gut feel approach to things. So we're actually using empirical evidence to do that. But it's also taking data and removing that from traditional then line of businesses and making that available outside of those silos, and then easily disseminating that out to everybody in the organisation, but doing it so that we're telling a story with that data. Thinking about the classic traffic light scenario where green is good, orange corrective action, red, we've got a real problem that we need to focus directly on. But also thinking about how you then enable then mobile people to then consume that data so that it's distilled down and easy for them to then consume the right data that they need at the right time. Because if we think about, in order to be able to drive that data-driven culture, it is very much a journey and not a destination, because that culture is something that needs to be ingrained in every part of the organisation, whether that's through the data governance around the accuracy and the way that information is collected, through to then the data custodians that then manage and control the tribal knowledge associated with that data to ensure that we have a common nomenclature and everybody's talking the same language when it comes to data, which then helps from a data interchange perspective as we start to then get various different systems to be able to then talk efficiently and effectively directly together. But underpinning that data-driven culture is the need for us then to be able to establish a platform that allows us then to consume information, but then be also able to then have an accurate system of record. And that's really where our modern data warehouse architecture starts to come into play. And that modern data warehouse architecture not only allows us to then satisfy our reporting requirements, but it also enables us to be able to take data from the broad range of services and sources that we have throughout the organisation. As sensors now start to become ubiquitous, whether that's through systems or whether that's through IoT, whether that's through image recognition or speech recognition directly through that, being able to unlock the value that sits in each of these signals becomes important for us to be able to then provide a holistic view on the way that services are being delivered, but also providing us that ongoing operational efficiency inside of each of our different organisations. And the key for that modern data warehouse architecture is then having a platform that allows us to ingest all of that data and be able to then unlock the insights, enabling us to then move to prescriptive analytics. Because if we think about that maturity as we move through that data-driven culture, first of all, we move through reporting into business intelligence, and then finally, actually, where we want to try and do is move beyond just reporting into prescriptive insights, where we can then start to then monitor and control what's happening from an organisational perspective. So it's then thinking about how we go about ingesting all of that data, thinking about how we go about storing that data, and that's where the concept of a data lake comes in, is the data comes from a number of different sources that we need to ingest directly into that. And then thinking about how we then provision a data hub over the top of that data. The data hub then being allowing us to then take that central master data management that we have and enabling us to radiate that out as a trusted data set, whether that's common questions such as show me the number of employees, show me the number of patients in residential care, show me the number of people that are then receiving services at NDIS funded. Having a central repository for that becomes key as part of our data hub. It then allows us to take that data and gain rich insights through the ability of us to be able to model and serve that data, but also the ability for us to prepare and train that data to then feed into industry-based machine learning and AI models that help improve and deliver the way that we're providing services. The next step that we can do in order to then start to prepare for the recommendations from the Royal Commission report was thinking about the establishment of an integration and services practice. And really, when we start to think about integration, this is really about how we start to then leverage the capability in many of our existing legacy source systems. Often it's very difficult to then underpin and change those source systems because they're central to the way that business processes are delivered. But one of the ways to increase the agility of those systems is to be able to easily provide an interface that allows other systems to be able to build and talk directly to that, or data then be able to then surface and consumed, whether that's through mobile capability or whether that's sharing that data with an external provider. So thinking about the concept of using the old while you embrace the new as central to how we go about establishing an integration services practice by actually and then foster a culture of API development, which allows us to then go and take the business rules and logic that we have across a number of our different processes and to put them in one spot so that as we need to adopt and embrace change at a faster cadence than ever before, we can then manage and change that in one central location through establishing that practice. And if we think about then establishment of that practice, really what that comes down to is a number of key core steps. The first of those is really being able to connect to our data services no matter where they reside. Because as we start to think about moving more and more to that top maturity model where we're delivering services through software as a service, we need to be able to not only think about then our on-premise solutions and our public cloud services, but how do we go about connecting to that data wherever it exists and being able to create a single pane of glass that feeds into our data hub. The second stage that we then see through that integration services methodology and how it can be adopted in organisation is then starting to expose APIs and microservices as we move more and more to an event-based architecture, allowing us to respond when a particular event happens. So, for example, if a nurse call register is not recorded in a particular period of time, what is the event and how do we go about responding directly to that? That allows us to then continue to then build a framework that we can then build ongoing integrations with, that we can then feed into various different systems, allowing us then to have the freedom to be able to then think about delivering those services on any cloud, but also then thinking about how we can then start to then bring in additional services that then start to surround our core line of business systems that enable and increase the agility of those platforms as we go. And we see that this is a key methodology and a proven way to then start to increase the way that systems can then easily start to interface and interchange data and enable you to be on the front foot to thinking about then the challenges that some of the changes that are happening in the sector will then provide. We then think about, what does that look like though from an architectural perspective though? If we think about the way that looks inside of Microsoft Azure today, is this integration services reference architecture is where a number of back-end systems, no matter where they actually sit, are easily then able to go through a central resource group that is able to then contain our API management, but also contains all of our workflow and orchestration capability as well. By being able to then go and leverage the building blocks directly inside of Azure, it means that that integration services platform can be readily and easily then delivered, and it enables you to actually spend more time on delivering business outcomes rather than having to build all of the services. I often think that as we move more and more through this integration services, it's really about being a plumber and how do we then go and then interface different services to deliver capability, whether it's some of the ones that you've seen directly here in the slide, but being able to then leverage the myriad of different Azure services that are available to be able to then deliver out of the box capability, so you can then spend more time rather than actually then writing each of those services from scratch as we traditionally would in the past. The next thing to focus on is really how do we then go and increase then our underlying IT infrastructure. That IT infrastructure is then often very much the legacy boat anchor that we spoke about. And really it's then thinking about how do we think about our cloud first strategy to enable then changes around the way that services are delivered from a cost perspective, thinking about tying that back to then a service pay model from an internal chargeback, whether that's a per bed model, whether that's a per service model, but then using that to be able to then have a direct cost to deliver that capability and that service, but also allow you to then start to think about the rationalisation of services by being able to deliver more and more of the commodity services that the cloud starts to provide, but also then increasing the productivity. So that productivity could be the way that apps and changes are deployed by introducing infrastructure as code and having consistent deployment mechanisms as change happens. So as line of business systems increase their cadence to then be able to respond to the ongoing changes in the sector, the ability to IT to be able to respond to those changes, but do that in a manner that ensures consistency, but also allowing you to then start to optimize those digital assets. So when you think about though that improvement around IT infrastructure, there's really a proven methodology that you need to go through. And that doesn't matter what public cloud provider that you're utilizing. And that's that implementation stage that is really actually about defining strategy and understanding what does success look like. Having that plan and then thinking about it's not an all-in cloud or an all-on-prem, but very much a hybrid scenario, and understanding what are the right workloads to migrate, but also then thinking about where it makes sense to simply just forklift and then lift and shift directly into then IaaS to then allow you to then go and retire some of the existing workload that you've got, but also then thinking about from that strategy and that perspective when you make that plan, where do we truly want to start to digitally transform services, where we want to then go and move them and refactor them or totally re-architect them to deliver platform as a service capability. Because one of the things we often see is then making sure that there's that cloud governance and ensuring that there's ongoing optimization. It's not a set and forget model as you increase the digital estate inside of the cloud. the opportunity for you to be able to then think about continual optimization, whether that's through run books and collapsing and rehydrating workloads to then minimize cost, but also then thinking about then how you then control what services are then delivered and how they're delivered there from an optimization perspective there. So what we often see is this concept of the cloud adoption framework. And the cloud adoption framework is a consistent methodology that allows you to then go and adopt the cloud inside of Azure, knowing that you're walking through a proven process that helps ensure that whatever workload you go and deploy, you spend more time then focusing on business value rather than then thinking about the underlying platform there. And this is something that we've seen many organizations successfully deploy that's enabled them to leverage the capability that the cloud provides to rapidly adopt and change the business requirements, and then help them actually then spend more time of that finite budget delivering then outcome directly for those that need it most. And that's the consumer-based model to focus on. One of the other key challenges is around that constant then thinking about increasing the cybersecurity posture. One of the things that we see working with various different organisations is that unless that cybersecurity posture is being delivered, it makes it very, very difficult to then drive innovation inside of the organisation. Is that there needs to be this underpinning need of safety and security that's met, but it's also thinking about cybersecurity as the weakest link inside of the business, because really that security piece needs to actually then be comprehensively deployed. It's not just having a very rigid and structured approach in one part of our IT landscape. It's thinking about that entire ecosystem and making sure that all of those links in the chain are strong to make sure that there's no chance about then having challenges there. But also thinking about modern ways of delivering security as well, and how you can then think about rationalising the number of vendors. Traditionally, security has been then a combination of various different vendors. Now with then E5 and M365, the ability for you to then uplift that security posture and be able to leverage the capability and use the technology that you've always got to have best of breed space, with now the Microsoft security products being in 5 of the magic quadrants for security from Gartner. And really thinking about how you can then have one truly integrated solution that really starts to humanise security, because security should not be a blocker, it should be an enabler for people. And unless that humanisation and ease of use is taken into care, then it's often very hard to then continue to foster and grow innovation throughout the business there. So when we think about cybersecurity in Azure, really that's designed to safeguard your entire environment. And what we're now seeing is that traditionally Microsoft would create a product and shift that DVD or that ISO for somebody to then think about how they then manage and secure the environment. Now with delivering services at true cloud scale, all of those signals are then easily able to be identified, so that when a particular threat or when a particular issue occurs, it's able to then be identified very early, but also be able to then go and leverage the underpinning AI capability to be able to then continually learn and then be able to then change the way that threats are then managed and how to then identify them very, very quickly and rapidly to ensure the ongoing posture of security across the environment. And Azure Sentinel is a perfect example of that. So a cloud SIEM tool as well as a cloud SOAR that allows you to then collect information not only from Azure environments, but also being able to then provide a single pane from a security perspective across all of your digital assets, across other cloud providers, but also being able to then tap into other security services, as well as being able to then collect data directly from your on-prem environment, allowing you to spend more time knowing that that provides a single posture no matter where that data or where that security boundary then needs to then be delivered. When we think about organisations though, the organisational agility is one of the key components of that. And organisational agility is really focused around how do we put tools into the hands of people that need it the most. And those are the specialist workers out there in the field that understand and can see the challenges that need to be addressed there. And with the introduction of Power Platform and low code, it enables all makers inside of our business to be able to then digitise and streamline processes, but do it in a robust and scalable way that ensures that we don't go and get application then spread, or as many people term it, Microsoft Access 2.0, where those applications are then consumed and developed. So one of the successes we've seen in many organisations is thinking about how you go about developing a centre of excellence to help drive that innovation, how you increase then the skills of everyone from a digital perspective inside of the organisation, but empowering that collective like-mindedness to be able to then go and solve common business problems. We also see this being done effectively across organisations as well, especially across the sector where that capability can then be shared and that common solutions and solving common problems directly with that. And with the Power Platform, what it enables the organisations to do is to go and take those low-code platforms and tie them into the broader Azure ecosystem, being able to then tie that directly back into connectors, whether that connector is into Microsoft Teams to be able to enhance the experience and collaboration, whether that's into Dynamics 365 to be able to then take the customer experience and make that centre and fore, or whether that's then being able to tie into the myriad of other connectors that are available natively directly inside of Azure. So by building that common platform, it enables organisations to then rapidly accelerate, but also allows you to build on top of those legacy systems as you can then rapidly go and deploy mobile aware applications, but also be able to then develop specific digitised solutions that we spoke about, whether that's taking existing paper-based forms, whether that's then streamlining an AR or an AP process with automatic invoice recognition, or whether that's being able to then use robotic process automation to then be able to record keystrokes to then increase the efficiency of using some of those legacy systems as well. So thinking about then how the Power Platform can then accelerate and continue to increase the organisational agility. And a sample of how that can then interface is the diagram that we show here there, where what we have is an existing legacy system. It's an ERP platform that we can then extract data out, be able to create an API that's then shared and surfaced up into then a mobile application, and also then consumed through other capability, whether that's directly through extracting that data to then interface with other providers, or enabling that information to easily be consumed in Power BI and disseminated through everywhere in the organisation. So if you think about the findings that have come out of the Aged Care Royal Commission and how you can then start to be making sure that your team and your organisation is prepared for the changes, but also be able to then continue to deliver effectively and efficient offerings, really the summary is establish a data-driven culture. So thinking about how you can then leverage a single pane of glass to be able to have ready access to information that you can share with all stakeholders directly inside of the business. It's also then thinking about then how you can then make sure that data can easily be interchanged with everybody inside of the organisation and all the systems that you manage and maintain. How do you then improve that IT infrastructure by leveraging the cloud to then be able to take those existing platforms and spending less time on operational management and more time on then delivering business value? Thinking about cybersecurity as underpinning everything that is delivered inside of the organisation and ensure the ongoing efficiency, but also managing risk associated with that from a business operations perspective by ensuring that security becomes part of the DNA across everybody inside of the business, and then increasing that awareness from everyone through increasing IT literacy, and then thinking about organisational agility and how you can then rapidly respond and solve some of the challenges in a low code and no code environment. So one of the ways that MOQdigital is assisting organisations in the aged care and healthcare sector, and more broadly in the community sector, is through the enablement with a product that we have developed called Care Insights. So Care Insights is designed to be able to take all of the data that sits across the systems that you have inside of aged care and community care and be able to deliver those in a central dashboard capability. The other thing that we're providing, and you'll have details of this sent to you after the webinar, is focusing on how you can then prepare yourself from a digital readiness assessment. So understanding where you sit and where the focus needs to be to help you improve the way that services are delivered, to not only respond to then the findings and recommendations in the Aged Care Royal Commission, but how you can then increase the digital literacy, but also the digital efficiency by making sure you're maximising the value of all of the systems that you're using throughout the organisation. So thanks for your time today with the webinar. Really what we wanted to do is outline where we think that organisations need to then start to think about making their investments from their IT landscape in order to be able to then be on the front of the wave and be well positioned to respond to the ever-going changes and disruption that are happening broadly across the industry. So back to you, Amelia, for any questions.
Does anyone have any questions before we conclude? Awesome. Well, thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for joining today. We hope you found the webinar very informative. Keep an eye out on your emails this afternoon, as we will send some assets and the recording to this session as well. Thank you, everyone.